Hi there, and welcome on the journey to transform culture. I'm Steve, and today I'll be guiding our conversation. Well, folks, hope you're having a fantastic day and an even better week. Today's topic is sacrifice. I know oftentimes, because generally my approach is dealing with organizational culture because there is such suffering that is going on in organizations. Partly it's preventable, some is self inflicted, and still more is a little bit of being lost in the dark, right? People crawling around, symbolically crawling around trying to find their keys on the floor. So it runs the gamut organizationally, right? But all of culture, right? All of culture is suffering in one form or another. And if you think about it, this is why we sacrifice, right? Oftentimes we'll talk about service, super noble, absolutely, right? But we're coming at it today from a perspective of sacrifice, right? In the general sense in culture, you might go, well, who are those who sacrifice? Well, of course, we've got our firefighters, right? Our EMTs, our law enforcement, right? There's a myriad of different agencies governmentally, but then there's also those who are non-governmental, right? Who are putting themselves in harm's way, right? It could be security teams. It could be management teams looking out for their personnel, right? Safety, right? Organizational safety directors and so on and so forth, all the way through the organization. What are we doing to make sure we're protecting the people, right? There are sacrifices that have to be made. Obviously, the most dangerous ones are the ones we think of. But aren't people on the teams also sacrificing, right? They're sacrificing their lives, right? For an organization. They're investing their time. They're making a choice. They're deciding to choose who and what organization they're going to align with to sacrifice their time and their treasure. Because, hey, if you don't think people aren't spending money to try to make money just in the workforce, you're deluding yourself. But who am I going to align to sacrifice? Who's worthy to sacrifice for and with, so that I can provide for my family, so that I can provide for those I care about in the community and the rest of culture, right? People are making sacrificial choices. There's some people who are very talented in one area, but maybe that area isn't necessarily one that they could, say, pay the bills, right? Fully, right? They might be able to do a little, but not a lot, not all, right? You might have somebody who's a doctor that's a fantastic doctor, right? But they're just dispassionate about what they do now, perhaps. And maybe they're wanting to do something more creative or go down a different path. Well, there's a sacrifice when we make these life choices as well. Life choices to be able to sacrifice, to be able to do those things. Hey, make less, right? But you're also dealing with less, right? It could be that you have less headaches, but you have less pay, right? There's always going to be some kind of a trade-off. I know oftentimes we think, well, there doesn't have to be a trade-off. There doesn't have to. Well, there doesn't have to be. I think it's about getting right with the path and aligning with the correct path. Then the sacrifice doesn't feel like sacrifice, right? How do you know if you're aligned? The sacrifice doesn't feel like sacrifice. It feels good to do for others and so on and so forth, right? So, but there are those who are making the more emergency life, lives in the balance sacrifice. And there are those who are really trying to sacrifice for themselves and their families to take care of them. There is really almost no one who isn't making a sacrifice. Even somebody who's, dare I say it, when I was plenty of young people out there living in their parents' basement, right? And going to school, and maybe they're not working. or maybe they're just kind of going to school. They're not really applying themselves. Look, folks, we all grew up in different eras, and we all know this happens. And there's a wave of this. The wave comes and the wave goes, right? Young people trying to figure out, what direction do I go? Caught in the middle, maybe unprepared. They're making a sacrifice kind of as a result of, right, of not maybe planning, right? Not planning while they were in school or when they were younger, or maybe parents were sacrificing too much and didn't take the time to sacrifice in the area of mentoring, right? That now would have helped young people make a decision. That being said, right, you may have gone down one professional path, and you may have recommended that path to your children as they became adults, right? And they may have thought, nope, not doing that, right? They don't want to go down that path. And that's fine, because each person has to explore their own avenues. They have to seek out and find their own alignment. We're not all aligned the same, right? We're not all gifted in the same areas. We don't all have gifts and talents in the same areas. And we're not all willing to work as hard for some things, some expertise in some areas than we are for others, right? One person may just avoid computers with every breath, and that same person may go out and build a house, right? Because they work with their hands. A couple extremes there, but you get the idea. They're willing to sacrifice hard sweat labor to build something and to create that, because that interests them, and it is in them, right? The creation thing is in them before it came out of them. And no different with everything else that we can possibly do, right? Sometimes we're spoiled for choice. There are so many things out there. Well, what am I going to do? Right? What should I pick? And that can be a tough spot. So there are natural sacrifices we make in our own lives trying to figure out our path, right? And try to figure out where we should go. The sacrifices that we should be careful about, though, are when we are team members who align with an organization that we discover is a toxic one, right? Has a toxic culture. Then the sacrifice we're making now is I have to make a sacrifice here. I'm either going to have to sacrifice my own ego to speak up to try to fix this, or I'm going to have to sacrifice security to stop working there to go somewhere else. Now, if it's the work you enjoy doing, but it's the people who are struggling, I'll just call it struggling, right? People are struggling. You have to make, in your mind, there's a sacrifice. Now, we can see that as a glass half empty or half full. We can say a sacrifice to be made, or an opportunity, right? If we start to see areas where we might feel like we're going to have to make a sacrifice, COVID hits and people maybe had to sacrifice pay or suffer job loss, whatever it was, right? There was a sacrifice, and that led to many shifts in people doing different professions. Sadly, some businesses closing, some expanding, and so on and so forth. So there's sacrifices that get made because of environmental things, right? Social and environmental things that can occur. If your town flooded, God forbid, it may have wiped away where you work for 20 years. Now you had to make a sacrifice. Now you've had to move, probably with nothing, and lost everything, right? That is tragic and difficult. Our nation goes through sacrifices when we suffer losses, right? Individually or in large measure. We sacrifice, we empathize and feel for the close loved ones who have taken the direct loss in their families, but we feel that, every country globally and community feels that for the people whom they know, right? And when this happens on a large scale, even nation states will reach out and empathize and assist, right? It happens. So There are sacrifices to be made, and there are sacrifices we're making all the time. But what we should keep in mind is that the sacrifices we make are ones that are going to lead to better outcomes. If we're going to foot stomp anything about sacrifice is the only thing lost in sacrifice is if we don't learn from it, or somebody's lives are not somehow improved by it, right? Obviously, environmentally, that's a tough one. But again, the lesson for all of us in all sacrifice, wherever you are on that spectrum, is that what did we learn from this? What is the thing? Sometimes it's just for us to reflect on our values and to appreciate the blessings that we have, right? To take a moment, say a prayer for those who are, at the front lines of suffering, and then what? Honor that suffering by what? How we now live. Somebody had said to me the other day, I don't really give veterans enough credit, or not credit, but appreciation. And I'm a little conflicted about that. I'm a veteran, retired Air Force, and it's not because I don't think appreciation is nice. I think it's very commendable and very much appreciated to be appreciated, right? But I know, for my brother and sisters at arms, is this. And I'm going to put it into a short little way for you to understand how you can appreciate. And I think it's the same way when we're talking not just the armed forces, but also firefighters, police officers, anybody who's out there, anybody to do with safety, right? All of those frontline folks, right? Safety of society, essentially, right? I would pull it all together and say the best way to show your appreciation, obviously, it's nice to say a nice thing. That's fine. That's great and very much appreciated. But the better thing that we all hope, this is what we all hope when we're making personal sacrifices and then seeing potentially the lives of those we've worked with and served with vanish right before our eyes because of the ultimate sacrifice, right? Is this. Let your appreciation be revealed in how you live your life, right? I come back to that. Let your appreciation be revealed in how you conduct and live your life. What does that mean? Treat the people you work with respect and dignity. Throw some joy and a little happiness in there. You've got a great stew there, right? Same thing, if you're an organization, if you're a leader in an organization at any level, and it could be, gads of you in there, or owners, show your appreciation by how you serve and sacrifice for your team in providing for your team, which ends up being for the customer ultimately, right? Show appreciation to your customers, right? Show appreciation to your peers. Show appreciation to your competitors. They're making you better, right? I think all of us who have been at the front lines of any danger in any dangerous way would say this. Let it be revealed in how you're living your life. Do you love, forgive, show empathy? Do you give a hand up? Or do you let a friend or a family member flail in the wind? When you know that they're struggling and suffering, do you sit back and snicker, ha ha ha? Or, is it toxic like that? Or are you, hey, so-and-so's struggling. Hey, why don't we do this for them? Why don't we do that for them, right? Because most folks, the difficulty we have as human beings is that because we do have ego and pride, most people won't ask for help, right? They won't ask for help when they are truly struggling. And the other part of that, we won't ask for help when we're truly struggling because we also realize that people can see it. Do you have to ask if it can be seen? When family members or friends are struggling, you can see it. You can see it in how they're living and what they got going on or don't have going on and so on and so forth, right? If the behavior of their life is one of struggle, how can you be of service? They're suffering to try to make it through, right? And not giving up the fight. And that in its own way is a service, right? They are performing a service by enduring that suffering. So that's another way. Honor those who have put themselves in great danger or continue to on a daily, constant level. By what? By letting it be revealed, your thankfulness and your appreciation in how you treat one another, how you treat your team, how you provide, how you treat your customers, right? Are you a builder of bridges? Are you problem solvers? Do you collaborate? Or are you divisive? Are you a rumor monger, right? Are you defamatory? Are you just throwing firecrackers and in between people's lives and dividing their lives? Are you sitting back when people are truly suffering, right? Because if that's true, you're not making a sacrifice. You're not making a sacrifice. And what you put out there comes back. And if you're not putting anything out there, then nothing is going to come back. Or worse yet, worse is coming back, right? That boomerang is going to catch up momentum and it's going to come back 3 times harder your way. So sacrifice, we all touch it all the time, even in our own lives, but also in the lives of those adjacent to us, our peers, leaders, and in our community or in our culture and organizations. Everyone experiences and must travel the road of sacrifice. Remember, and this is the key point, then we're going to wrap it up. Remember, let that sacrifice be for a good reason, right? Let it be that if you're going to make a sacrifice for others, that it's a good and noble cause, right? That it brings about good. It doesn't divide and doesn't tear down and doesn't hurt and doesn't destroy, right? That it is good and loving, right? And this is how we protect love. Again, Foot Stomp the book, The Journey to Transform Culture, what leaders and teams need to know. I tell you right in there, the reason why we're here is to protect love. And sacrifice in that effort to protect love is a noble cause. And we'll wrap it up on that note. Remember, folks, hit the good green domino 3 to 5 times a day to uplift, motivate, inspire, and just encourage one another. When you do that, not only are we helping to transform culture, but we're transforming ourselves and transforming our own lives, right? And it's making sure that we're making legitimate sacrifice for noble causes and keeping that a reciprocal relationship between us and others in our lives. All right, folks, hope you have a fantastic day. Remember to hit like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, we'll talk to you later.